Kelsey, you've not been on for a while.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
It's been a while, innit? Connor, I feel like you've been on quite a lot, Connor, recently.
This chat is just like podcast version of How's the Weather. Why are we talking about the last podcast we were on?
All right, sorry. We'll just get into it then, Tom.
Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this your podcast.
Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, the show where we like to find the best game within a really specific and obtuse category. For example, this week we're looking for the best game where there is shooting, but you don't get a gun for ages. Joining me for that, we've got Connor Macker, Kelsey Rayner, and Tom Ori. Hello, everyone. You will be aware, of course, if you've been listening for the past few weeks, that there is now a subscribers version of the podcast, which is $2.99 a month, along with other benefits from VG247. You can find out about that by going to VG247.com and clicking on the Support Us page. Essentially, it's a longer version of the podcast in which everyone finds out what I would have picked for the topic, and then there's a bit of workplace bullying where I'm told why that is entirely wrong.
Does Connor reveal even more skin? In the extended edition.
I have to. Well, if you're a subscriber, he puts the top on.
It's not what people want. If you pay to see the extra bit on this podcast, I will show
All right, Connor, fucking hell. I'm enjoying the maple leaf tattoo.
I've got a new one. Have you seen it? It's a little glass with a Denmark flag in it. It's good.
Oh yeah. It's just like your travel.
It's like passport
sort of
stamps, but on your arm.
It's like passport stamps. I do like passport stamps.
Yeah.
I'm kind of. This is a really sad thing to say. I'm kind of sad when they just wave you through an airport and don't actually stamp you in.
I think a lot of people are, but don't like to let onto it.
But I went to Tokyo a few years ago, and they have this nice little stamp. It's got a little tree on it. It looks great. And I like that because I like the passport as like a physical. Yeah.
Well, when you say you get sad when you don't get your passport stamped, that's basically not an issue anymore because we're out of the EU, right?
Yeah, but
that's one Brexit benefit you can enjoy.
I guess,
Connor.
plenty of stamps and longer queues, right? That's kind of the joy of it. Yeah, no, I guess you're right.
What's the problem?
Do you know what, Jim? You've really turned me around on the whole situation.
I mean, I like to think it's a really worthy benefit. But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking for the best game that has shooting, but you don't get a gun in it for ages. A surprisingly rich topic. Tom's scowling at me, wants me to get on with it.
It wasn't a rich topic at all.
It's a brilliant topic.
It's a really rich topic.
It's actually quite hard.
I struggled for a long time doing this. I found one game that I refused to pick, so I just had to work around it somehow.
Yeah, that's the game, Tom. All right, okay. First of all, I want to hear from Kelsey. What have you got? Because I know you're quite excited about your pick, so now I'm excited about it. So
I'm quite a big fan of my pick. My pick is Scorn.
Oh wow!
Which obviously I think it came out last year. No, end of 2022.
Okay.
And it's very much this atmospheric, I want to say puzzle game more than anything, where you're wading through these really fleshy, alien-inspired environments, putting your hands in holes and other crevices to try and basically figure out the way forward and get more information out of this really convoluted, weird, strange story. But it did have shooting in it. And you don't actually get a gun until very late into the game. And it was very much one of those where it's this gun that you've crafted from the environment itself. You have 6 bullets. You're very much forced by the environment not to rely on it. But the whole reason why I kind of picked Scorn was because when Scorn first came out, there was not controversy, but there was a bit of an uproar about how it was marketed. And a lot of people were expecting a shooter game from it. So when they went into it and realized that actually they're going to be here hitting their head against the wall for hours before they actually get a gun, and even when they get a gun, they don't get to use it all that much. It led to some people not being super happy with it. But if you forget about the whole gun stuff, it's a brilliant game. Albeit, like, towards the end, when you do come to the conclusion of the story, it is a bit like, has something happened here or has nothing happened at all? You're left to come to your own conclusions, and in a way, it's kind of unsatisfying. And I think it would have probably benefited from more combat. But yeah.
Sounds great.
I feel like this is a game where if they'd been really clever, right, this is quite dark, but you like spend the whole game wanting a gun, right? I want a gun to shoot these things. You finally get a gun, it's got one bullet in it, and you've got no hope, and you just kill yourself.
You know what? That is dark, but that would have made a half decent ending.
There you go. I'm available for consulting on scripts if anyone wants advice.
Jesus Christ.
I feel like the ending was kind of similar in tone to that overall, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah.
I just love how that. It's just how do you recover from that, Tom?
I'm trying to think of a joke you could make, but it's
trying to like.
No,
it's quite
not
its
much.
own.
It's not. I'm not saying that is like this is set. This is all context-wise in this horrible, fleshy, alien-y world, right? And you're out of like. That's it. You're done.
We can lighten the tone by mentioning the fact that the game has lots of hints at rebirth. So
so you really
the
should.
end isn't necessarily the end in Scorn.
Yeah, so like even more reason why Tom's idea is good then.
But that's also a stretch. So.
Yeah, I played a bit of Scorn, and I have to say I just found it too sort of it's really tactile. It's really well done in the way that it depicts you putting your arm into stuff that is horrid, but probably a bit much for me. I was like, I can't deal with this. I couldn't eat porridge for like a week.
Yeah, I found it super impressive in that there really was no hand-holding whatsoever. You just had to go in circles and circles until you figured it out through brute force, which at the time I was guiding it, and it was very frustrating, especially like I think it was like chapter 5 onwards. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? And it was the developer Discord for it was full of questions, that's for sure. But in a way, I kind of appreciate that. Like, it's nice to have a challenge, but at the same time, it's like you can see why so many people bounced off it. Not just because they expected a shooter and it wasn't, but because it was very difficult. And with how difficult it was, a lot of people just couldn't stick to it.
Have you seen I think it's Cronenberg film? Yeah. And I can't remember what it's called, to be honest, but I watched it. I remember, and it's about like, maybe, I can't remember, like this like doing art inside humans or something. It's very odd, incredible. And I remember thinking, imagine just watching this film and like, you've just like, yeah, I'm a 65-year-old, I'm about to retire. Maybe I've retired, I'm 70. Lucky them. I'm like, oh, this film sounds, I like him because he's from the films I've seen before. And you sit down and watch this film and they're like, using machines to like put little tattoos on a kidney or something, and like weird shit goes on.
I've had a super similar experience with Cronenberg, but it wasn't the film that you're on about. So my experience with Cronenberg is Videodrome and The Fly, and then I went and watched Scanners, and I was like, what that? It just wasn't what I expected. Like, I knew Cronenberg obviously produces all these fucked up things, but I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting to see someone's head explode like that. But
I think the moment Scorn was shown off, people were like, yeah, give me that sweet Cronenberg juice. Like, I want a game that's just all that. I want to live in that for like 20 hours. And they did get that, but whether or not you enjoyed the actual playing of it is a different thing altogether.
A bit of a tangent, but that Life Eater game that came out last week from Strange Scaffolds has a Cronenberg feel to it massively. So, yeah, if you like games that remind you of Cronenberg, try that one out.
So Lavi Nelson, a lot of his stuff he's a bit of an auteur like Cronenberg, I guess.
Yeah.
And a lot of his stuff is weirdly sort of about, I don't know, the sort of hinterland between life and death and, you know, organ trading and stuff. And it's really good. Also, the worst thing David Cronenberg has ever done is that he plays a character on Star Trek Discovery, which is a terrible show.
How do you make these links all the time?
I'm not. He's just fucking in the show. It's not me making the link. It's a job he took.
I bet the moment that name came up, the first thing that came to your mind was, he was in Star Trek, actually.
He's currently in Star Trek.
Oh, he's okay. I apologize.
He's in new episodes of Star. Right. Okay. Right. Let's move on from Star Trek.
Yes.
I want to make Tom go last because he doesn't like that. Connor, what would you pick for this?
My pick is Dead Island.
Terrible topic.
I like this topic. My pick is Dead Island.
Oh yeah,
Dead Island is like, I can't remember when it came out, but I remember being somewhat like young and quite boring.
The original one. The original one.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I heard about the game was of that trailer, the famous trailer where it's all in slow motion and it's
with
very
the beautiful score.
When I think like a couple get eaten by zombies and a kid falls out a window or something. I don't know. But I wasn't really sold on the game off that. I was big into action games, big into just like fun, violent extravaganzas, and like kind of similar to how Scorn wasn't what people expected. I eventually did get Dead Island later down the line, and it was great. It was like this really fun kind of gory melee fest, like scavenger fest, and it captures this part of zombie fiction, zombie stories that I thought at the time, and I still think today, doesn't really get enough play, and it's probably the best part of zombie stuff, which is that bit where you're just trying to like find food or a plank of wood you need to fix up a window or something. It's like that risk reward moment where you're like, I really need like some orange juice, but if I go through that door, I bet like 10 zombies are there and they're gonna mess me up. It's great. And as part of that sort of like scavengers approach to zombie stuff, like a zombie story and a zombie game, Dead Island doesn't have many guns at all in Act 1 or Act 2. It's all very much like grab a hammer and hit a zombie in the head, and it takes ages unless you're really nailing it. It's really slow and really methodical, and at some point you're like, God, I've spent like 1 minute just trying to like fend off this one zombie.
Methodically bashing a skull in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like very like, is it dead yet? I think so. Okay, let's move on. No, wait. He made a noise. Let's go back. Bang. Okay, he's done. Good. Okay, let's move on.
Just sounds kind of arduous and traumatizing.
I loved it. It was exactly what I needed at the age of like 14. It was
I do think in Dead Island 2 especially, it was so much more fun using melee weapons than guns.
Well, Dead Island 2 for sure played up like the strengths of Dead Island 1, which is like you're fending off zombies with your bare hands and whatever you can get your hands on. Because they knew it was the strength of the first game. The first game was very much like just deal with what you can. And when you finally do get a gun as like a rare quest award or something, or if you find it in like a really super secret place, it's not like you can't just use it forever. It may have like a handful of bullets and then you're done. So then it's got that classic zombie survival thing of like, can I afford to shoot the zombie? Sure, it will get rid of it, but like, is it worth it? The answer is always no. So like, I love that. I think Dead Island 1 really captured something special about zombie games.
The problem you have, Connor, Dead Island 1 was absolute trash, right?
It was great.
One of the worst games I've ever played. Like absolute
It is not
garbage.
one of the worst games you've ever
Honestly,
played. It's
like,
not one of the worst games
anyone
you've ever
that
played.
likes that game, I have serious questions about their
ask
taste in games.
I don't know. I do remember that game being
trash.
A bit rubs. Like
it was like
the game was great.
But Con, listen, you might get redemption here.
Yeah,
is that I honestly believe that first release on like PS3, Xbox 360 was it then?
Which is when I played it for sure.
Garbage.
Okay.
Terrible game. But it got re-released on PS4, Xbox One, I think. Like with the expansion and everything, and they tweaked a load of stuff, and I played it again because why not do it again? And it was much better. I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. So, Connor, are you saying your pick is the original
I'm saying it's the original because I don't know what you're on about.
You've lost.
I don't know what you're on about. What did they tweak in the re-release to make it better?
It was much better. If you haven't seen it,
did they make it more simple and more fast?
The first one was like
make it through
jankiest rubbish I've ever
played. But the
played.
jank's the point. In the same way that like Silent Hill, the jank's the point. In the same way that like it takes what's the Silent Hill 2 protagonist? Kel's help.
James.
So the same way that James can't just like do sick like lead pipe combos on like monsters, and he like swings it around scared, pissing himself. That's kind of the Dead Island thing. You know, you got to like get whatever plank of wood or golf club you can, and kind of like swing it like your life depends on it. It's great, and you know, I think that's great. I think it captures that sort of scavenger thing that is really great about zombie fiction, in a similar way to like Dead Island 1's 72-hour survival. The bonus mode at the end of the game did the same thing, but limited resources. It's great. I don't know. Dead Island 1's great, and I think there's a reason he got a sequel. It's because people know it's great.
It sold well.
It almost didn't.
But it was terrible.
It did. It was so good that they went through like several developers and a decade trying to make a new one because they knew it was so good, and that's the only reason why.
I'm glad they did
the
it.
original, well, not the original, but Dead Island Definitive Edition, the version that Tom's talking about, is now £1.91 on the Xbox store.
Well, you know, it's good, you know, buy it and see that I'm right.
And Tom
or
says
don't,
it's the
and just take
superior
my word
version.
for it.
It is.
I mean, how much is the original version of Dead Island? Well,
They've just burnt it. I can't buy it anymore.
they probably replaced it wholesale.
Don't even know if you can buy it anymore.
Which is a shame because I like the original.
You might have done yourself a mischief here because I don't like zombie games. So
what? Since when?
Since always. No, that's not true at all.
How was I meant to know that though? How am I meant to like avoid these pitfalls when they're just going out of nowhere?
You know, like a lot of them.
But you know what I mean, though. You know, like zombie games are wank when it's just you shooting infinite ammo into like like, who cares?
So
it might as well be
so...
Exoprimal where you're shooting velociraptors or like anything else when you're just like wiping down hordes. When a single zombie is a big deal, it's great.
See when things are so bleak, like I know Last of Us gets a lot of stick, and I know it's not quite a zombie thing, although it kind of is.
It's basically a zombie thing.
But it's got that little kind of flicker of hope going on. You know, it's not. It's not all. It's not all horrendous.
Yeah.
There's stuff like Dead Island. It's just like from start to finish, it is just like horrid. Whereas at least in Last of Us, at some point, like, you know, at the start of the second game, you wake up in a house that's got a DVD player in it, and you're like, oh, things aren't that bad. Anyway,
there's hope in Dead Island. You know, you make a machete that has like electrical wires pulsing through it, and you're like, do you know what? This is pretty cool. I can see myself having a good time here.
Not
and also spoilers. It's you know, things are good at the end of Dead Island 1.
Yeah, I suppose. You know? People have got battery-operated axes, I guess.
It's great. You ever like attach 9-volt batteries to like garden equipment?
Yeah.
You know
why? All right, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, I see you've been scowling this whole time. I think you've been finding a lot of what Connor has said to be quite arduous in itself.
I mean, I think he's just. There's no even point to discuss it anymore. I think we know he's not winning. And he went on a long time. Like, I think he knows that he's struggling. So he just kept going on about things that aren't even that exciting, right? Like, just stop, Connor. Anyway, So my choice, and like, I'm going to say, I originally was going to go with Death Stranding because it's the only game I could think of, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't want to pick that because I don't really like it very much, and I don't want to choose it. So I spent a long time trying to find something else. And then it kind of just fell into my lap, you could say, in that it was just the perfect choice. But anyway, this starts when I was about 10, right? So I was at primary school. And we used to have summer fates and things, right? Like most schools do. But back then it felt like they were a bigger deal than they are now. Like now you get like summer fate after school, and it's like for an hour, and there's like a couple of stands selling some cakes. That's it. We used to have ours primary school on the Saturday, so it was a big deal. It was a big event in the school calendar, and my mum would always help out. She circus background. She used to run the Candy Floss stall, big circus thing that is.
I'm just thinking about those guys. You know those guys on the YouTube comments who are just like, just so everyone knows, Tom's bit ends it.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's why I do this. I live for that kind of stuff.
I went on too long, by the way, just to remind everyone.
Yeah,
keep going.
But people like these bits, Connor. Anyway, so Candy Floss stall. But one of the events every year was fancy dress, right? So all the kids would get dressed up, and then they'd pick a winner. You'd win like small prize of some sort. And my mum, circus background, used to make the costumes for the circuses. Yeah, so she's good. Like that's her job. Like she's a seamstress. She makes things. And we used to have really good costumes, right? Me and my brother, really good costumes. And to remember the context, this was like the early 90s, so things were not the same as they are now. I went this year as a cowboy, and James went as an Indian, right? It's not, you can't do that these days. It's not a good idea. But it was different back then. There was no internet or anything. So one part of my costume, like I was the cowboy. So James had like the bow and arrow because he's an Indian, and I had a hat, and I was meant to have a gun, right?
Yeah.
But I forgot the gun. I didn't have the gun with me, so I stood there in line. We're all lined up, being judged. I just didn't have a gun. I was like, but gesturing to my mum, I don't have the gun. I don't have the gun. I don't have the gun. I was getting quite stressed about this, and then she ran home, got the gun for me, and then brought it back just in time. It was one of those cap guns. I don't know if you have those around still, but you loaded in these little like tapes of popping bits. You pull the trigger and it like made a bang, basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're illegal anymore because it's like a tiny explosion.
Grenade in your hand as a child. Yeah. But they were fine. They were safe back then in the 80s and early 90s. So I had one of those, and my mum came back, gave it to me. So I didn't have a gun for a long time, but I did end up having a gun. But in that time when I was waiting, I was thinking about my ideal game. That if the future would be made where you don't have guns, but actually is quite an exciting action-packed adventure still. And I was big into zombie movies as a child, scarred by many, you would say, probably, because I watched some things I shouldn't have watched as a kid. But I was thinking, what if there was a game, probably a sequel to a zombie game, where most of the threat was at night by the zombies? And then years later, Dying Light 2 would be made.
Right.
And some might argue here that, that game does have guns. It doesn't really. You kind of cobble together these things that aren't really guns. I think you could call them guns, really. You have like a bow and arrow. That's quite a cool bow and arrow, like a bow. But the guns are a bit terrible, and like I think they call them like boom sticks or something. They're not proper guns, right? But then, to my big surprise, 2 years later, after this game came out, that's a big chunk of time, far more than the time it would take you to play through the two other mentioned games that have guns later. They added guns. They just added guns to the game. And now you can get like a pistol and a shotgun and a rifle and something else. I can't remember what. Actual guns in Dying Light 2. It took 2 years. 2 years. So by like all sensible metrics, that wins, right?
Right. Okay. I'm not sure. Does it? Because we're talking about the spirit of the topic is you play a game that has guns and shooting in it, but for story reasons or whatever, you don't
playing it for 2 years, and then towards the end of that time, they added guns.
Yeah, is there a narrative reason why guns were adding in later?
No, they just
changed the game.
Let's just have guns now. Let's put guns in. That's not. You never specified that in the topic.
Not to support Tom here, but the category is best game that has shooting where you don't get a gun for ages, and Dying Light 2 does have shooting.
Yeah, but
and technically you didn't get a gun for ages. I don't know. It works. It fits.
It's the, you can't get around this. You
If I
can't get
start
around
playing
this.
Dying Light 2 now, can I play it as a shooter?
This is not about when you play Dying Light 2,
It
is
is.
It's not. It's about when I start.
All right, as a general experience,
me.
if I start it now, or if Connor or someone else watching, listening starts it today for the first time, can they get a gun straight away?
Don't know.
Yeah, because it's just added in.
That's not the
right?
point.
It's like
That's
an
not the point
afterthought.
of this.
It's not even.
Yeah.
I
So
waited
basically,
2 years to get a gun.
What you're saying is that Dying Light 2 used to be not really a shooter, and now it is basically a shooter.
Yeah.
Just because some guy in a suit made a PowerPoint presentation saying how gamers like guns and they should have guns in their game.
Yeah. Also, I want to point out, Dead Island, Dying Light, pretty similar, aren't they?
Very different.
I mean, one's good and
one
one's
of them is
awful.
really bad.
Dying Light is just terrible.
And Dying Light is
there
a
not
much
a bit
slicker
of,
game.
Is there not a bit of lineage between those two things?
But that's irrelevant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same
Is
sense
Dead
as
Island
like,
not? Is Dead Island not? Does
Yeah,
not
Dead
originate
Island is
some of the
the-
team who
Yeah,
went
but
on to make
everyone-
Dying Light.
Dead Island is the
It's
series
Techland,
people
isn't it?
want and people
Techland made
begged
Dying
for
Light.
for like
Yeah.
a decade, and
And
Dying
then
Light
Is Dying
is
Light not a sort of compromise for people who wanted?
No.
Dead
It's a
Island.
much
Worse,
better,
Dead
it's a
Island,
much
yeah.
better, much better playing game.
way
that
worse.
lots of people would prefer.
Oh, we've
It's
added
like you,
parkour for no reason.
you can't say, just because you can't say, they made this terrible thing
I
in the
did a
past
front
that
flip off a
devalues
building.
the good
I'm a
thing someone
zombie.
made later.
I'm struggling here. I'm
I
struggling a bit here.
jumped off a rope and I did a backflip onto a zombie.
I like that we've all chosen chosen gross games.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a
You've
gross
definitely
topic,
chosen the
you know?
grossest, though.
Oh, for sure. Like
Right.
sticking your arm into a big weird flesh wall. It's just
Like,
vulgar.
you know,
It's really
like,
bad.
Zombie stuff is gory, but nobody expects you to put your arm into anything horrid. So yeah, I
That's
think
not even the worst part of the whole game.
I
That's the
know.
one bit that everyone like clings to.
I'm thinking about it now. It's horrific. Okay, all right. I need to pick something now, and I feel like, in my head, Dead Island and Dying Light are so like filed so close together in the filing cabinet of my brain that I practically think you've basically chosen the same thing.
That is quite
Completely
funny.
different.
They are
Completely
totally
different.
different. They're like so.
But what the advantage that Connor has over yours, Tom, is that I think Connor's is on brief and yours isn't.
The
Because
brief. How can you say it's not on brief when the brief was just the name of this podcast? Best game that has shooting that you don't get a gun for ages.
We have to remember
Yeah,
that there's
exactly the reality that I'm telling you about.
But I meant as a consistent
here's the
narrative
thing.
experience, not as in it didn't have guns before, now it does.
That's the trick to this podcast. There's the brief as it's written, and then there's the idea Jim has in his head. You have to decide.
Other
before
people,
the
Jim.
podcast.
Other people are like, I've come up with this clever way to
Listen.
get around the name of this
Dom
podcast.
won last
they
week.
win. They
Dom
win.
won best game where you fight a bear last week by interpreting bear as in the gay tribe sense and not as the animal sense, and he won.
That's
So
brilliant.
So it's fine for other people to be going around the topic, but me, it's actually in reality, it's completely on brief. It's exactly what was
It's
asked
not on
for.
brief at all.
It is.
It's not on
How is
brief
it not?
Because there is no.
It's
there
a
is-
game. I played this game. It
Yeah.
had no guns. 2
Right.
years later, I got a gun and shot someone with it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I feel bad because I've been in Tom's shoes exactly like this like a million times, and it is painful.
Yeah.
But then again,
I feel everyone's done me a mischief here. I'm very much struggling with. Right, I'll tell you how I'm struggling. Right, firstly,
Right.
I cannot reconcile Tom's attempt to be clever about the brief with the spirit of the brief. And I cannot reconcile Connor's choice with the fact that it is crap.
Shut up. Shut up.
So I am going to go with Kelsey because I played that game for hours and there was no gun, and I'm actually very surprised to find out that there's guns in it. So I think it's on brief.
A game you couldn't bring yourself to even finish. To seize a gun.
Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I'm
does
squeamish.
mean it's bad. It's horror porn for perverts.
I couldn't bring myself to finish
bad.
Dead Island either because it was rubbish. Or Dying Light, for that matter, because I've also
Dying
found...
Light 2.
Dying Light 2, yeah.
Dying Light 1 is just...
I found Dying Light 2 to be a very much a slog. And, you know, I'm in this fucking building and people are being mean to me. And... You know, and at least in Scorn, like, you know, it's just you really trying to figure stuff out. And at the point where your arm has to go into something minging, it is at least interesting because it's a properly sort of alien environment that feels like an alien environment and not just a sort of human environment with flashing lights and things.
But what does that have to do with guns and there not being any?
Well, I'm just explaining.
Because there's one later on.
You're making like an artsy justification for why you're picking
the start of the brief
the
is
worst
best
of the
game.
3 games.
Yeah, the start of the
So,
brief.
and that's awesome.
It's a good game.
It's not the best game. Here is it. Dying
It's
Light
really
2
not.
is the best game
I
of
think
these
it's
three.
really not. Dead Island is the best one.
Definitely far more interesting than either of the stupid
Best.
zombie nonsense bollocks things
Best,
that you chose.
not interested.
Well, I think basically Tom and Connor, you've both effectively picked the same
We
thing.
haven't. Connor's gone like the low level choice, and I've gone to like the combination of years of experience.
I think Tom's pick is boring and awful, but it's a different game.
Connor.
It's not the same fucking game. It's really, really not.
It's like you practically sort of you're arguing between the difference between sort of Wolfenstein 3D and Catacomb Abyss. It's the same fucking thing.
Catacomb
right?
What?
Yeah, it's probably like a really dated reference.
Come on, right, we've picked Kelsey's one, right? Let's wrap up.
Yeah.
All right, bad. Kelsey's one. Scorn is the best game that has shooting, but you don't get a gun for ages. And I love the fact that didn't you say you don't get a gun until like basically the end?
It's near the end, yeah.
I mean, I love that. That's a real switcheroo. And I think it's by far the more interesting of the 3 games because 2 of them are fucking zombie games.
Interesting is a good word for just an artsy game you never finished. It's brilliant.
Look, an artsy game that I've never I couldn't bring myself to finish is better than a shit game I couldn't bring myself to finish.
It's
in
not
my
shit.
eyes. All right, okay. Thank you so much for listening. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us out. And if you are not a paid subscriber of the podcast, this is the point, I'm afraid, where we leave you to go on to do the extra bit that is for subs only. It's an extra sort of 15, 20 minutes or so where I tell people my pick and then everyone has a go at me. Usually at a point where I've already pissed off a couple of my colleagues and so that they're already primed to be extra.
So you go to vg247.com, vg247.com.
Yeah.
Top right, the support us, click that. And if it's on mobile, you've got to click the little button to expand the menu.
Yeah.
Click that. Support us. This is now the amount of supporters is now tied to my success here in my overall targets. So
really? God.
We better get those numbers up.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
If you want me to continue being employed.
If we don't get those numbers up, then there's not going to be the Tom was robbed movement is going to have a reason to continue existing, but not for the reasons that they want to. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. We will all be back next week with some other topic that we haven't decided yet. Everyone has to say goodbye. Tom doesn't wave because you only get waved by Tom if you're a paying subscriber.